What you gonna write with? What are you gonna write with? How you feeling? You all right? Hey, you gonna sit there like that? That ain't gonna work. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So tonight is the 9th class from the book of Salat, from Zad al-Mustaqni'. And tonight we start a new chapter, a new section, which is Sifat al-Salat, the description of the actual prayer. And in this section, it's a lot of detail, but now we get into actually what starts the prayer, what ends the prayer, what's recommended to do in the prayer, what breaks the prayer, a pillar of the prayer that if you don't do this thing, the prayer is not valid at all. So it's a lot of details in this section coming up. But this section in the beginning, which is the description of the prayer, is not broken down into those categories. So basically, this section right here that we start tonight, we're just saying, all right, when it's time to pray, what do you do? And we're going to go through from beginning to end what the prayer looks like. Then he'll come back after that and specify, okay, these things that we just spoke about in general are sunnah, is recommended. These things are obligatory. So the first section is, if we can say a little more general, it's specific. It's definitely specific because it's detailed, but it's a little more general compared to the categories or the chapters coming after it. So the author, rahimahullah, he says, Bab Sifat al-Salat. And the first thing he says is, Yusannu. And it's important to know what these terms mean in this section. Yusann. Yusann, meaning that in these terms, is recommended. The following two things are recommended. Now, it's important to know what recommended means so that we clear about the hukum, because a lot of the things that we're going to find out in this section, y'all, we do a lot of arguing about things. We cause a lot of problems between each other based on us not understanding the words. What is the ruling on a certain thing? And we hold things to be sometimes more important than they are. That's what we do. And then we end up arguing about something. And now the next time we see each other, we don't really want to give salams. And then it goes down a whole rabbit hole based on a misunderstanding that for real, I misunderstood it. And then I applied it on you. I saw you do something. I thought I understood something. I misunderstood it. I didn't know I was misunderstanding it. And then I went and I said something to somebody and I caused a whole problem between myself and somebody else based on my misunderstanding. And you know, most of us, may Allah forgive us, are not going to go back and fix the problem that we started. We'll just let it go on for years and act like nothing happened. So the first thing, yusannu, if something is recommended, what does that mean?
It's not obligatory, you don't have to do it, but it's probably more blessings in doing it.
It's not obligatory, you don't have to do it, but there's more blessings in doing it. We did something a little more specific than that. Remember we did that definition at the beginning of the Kitab al-Salat? Encouraged. Encouraged is another word for recommended. But if something is recommended, it's sunnah, recommended, encouraged. All of those are synonyms. But if that's the case, if something is recommended, that means it's a command to do it. But the command is not a command that's, for example, the command of something that's obligatory. So something that's obligatory, I'm just using numbers so that it's clear. It's a command from Allah, the Prophet says something 100%, no option in it. But something that's recommended, it is a command, but it's an 80% command. It's no sin on you if you don't do it. But should you do it? You should definitely do it. But what if you don't do it? It's not a sin. You don't get the reward, and it's not a sin. Everybody clear? Which is important because there's going to be some things in this chapter that are recommended, but we hold them as if they're obligatory. So if a person doesn't do it, I don't want to pray it behind them. I don't want to pray next to them, as if they invalidate the prayer. طيب? So the first thing he says, yusannu al-qiyamu inda qad min aqamatiha. It's recommended for the people to stand up for the salat when the mu'adhin says qad qamat as-salat. Qad qamat as-salat, meaning when it's time to pray. And if you have the PDF, it's on page 230. If we all sitting around and it's time to pray, it's two opinions, two positions. Number one is what the author mentions here, that is recommended to stand and line up for the prayer when the mu'adhin, that's calling the iqamah, when he says qad qamat as-salat. So before then, we might be all sitting around. The mu'adhin, he walks up, he says, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah, hayla as-salah, hayla al-falah, qad qamat as-salat. At qad qamat as-salat, then we stand and move the line up. Everybody clear? That's what that means. But he said it's recommended. Meaning what? It's not obligatory. Meaning, if you say it's not obligatory to stand when the mu'adhin says qad qamat as-salat, what does that look like? What does that mean for us if we're in the masjid and it's not obligatory to stand when the mu'adhin says qad qamat as-salat? So what does that mean? What am I able to do? When?
You can sit till the takbir.
That means I can sit there until everybody lines up, or I can be standing up before he said qad qamat as-salat. Everybody with me? What's recommended to stand when the mu'adhin says qad qamat as-salat? It's recommended to get up then. Recommended. Like, what if I get up before that and walk to the line? Nothing. That just means I missed practicing that sunnah for that issue, right? Everybody with me? You with me, Sheikh? That means I missed the sunnah in that issue. طيب. Some of the ulama say that you shouldn't stand until you see the imam. Whoever's leading the salat. When you see the imam, that you stand in, and that's another issue. We're just going on understanding what the author says. This next issue, may Allah forgive us and give us knowledge, is an issue that we got a lot of issues. We have a lot, and it happens here a lot, especially during Ramadan, and especially during Ramadan on the sister side. The second thing that he said is recommended, wa taswiyatu saf, straightening the rows, straightening the rows. He said the straightening the rows. What's the rule on straightening the rows? Huh? It's recommended. The author says, recommended to straighten the rows. This is the first question, y'all. Whose job is it? Who's responsible for straightening the rows? The imam? Huh? People in the rows? The people line up. The brothers they call the iqamah qad qamat as-salat. The brothers line up, the sisters line up. The sisters, we can't see what y'all do on the sister side, right? When it's time to line up, right? Everybody lines up. Who's responsible to make sure the rows are straight?
It has to be people in the road, so there's no way that you can keep the sisters straight, but you can't see it.
Let's leave the sisters for last. Who's responsible for making the brothers row straight? Huh? The imam of the brothers. Oh, yeah. Huh. That's the job of the imam. It's the imam's job. And that's part of the problem. We line up. The imam's job is to make sure the row is straight. Not every random brother in the row. The problem is every random brother, somebody got lean. This we do. We line up. Yo, Sheikh, move up. You start giving out directions, talking to people all crazy. No nice way to say it. Sound like my Sheikh, you slide up a little. We don't do that. Yo, move up. We talking to people like they're your kids. And now, whether we say it or not, now we feel like, yo, number one, who you talking to? Number two, who are you? May Allah forgive us, man. He apologized. That's something different. But you know what I'm saying? The sisters be doing it too. We had issues. They be complaining during Ramadan because the sisters do the same thing. Somebody takes it upon themselves to do the imam's job. The imam is the one who delegates one of you, whether it's on the brother side or the sister side. The imam delegates a person in the rows to check the rows. You don't delegate yourself like we do.
Didn't the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu
Sorry,
alaihi
son.
wasallam used to go around and straighten it out?
Jay, yeah, we're gonna get to that. And let me ask you this since you said it. When he went around the straighten, what did he check? He checked the chest. And what else? The shoulders. What do we check? We check the feet. We don't look at shoulders. We don't look at chest. None of that. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he will wipe against the shoulders and make sure the shoulders were in line. We're going to get to that. See, but we do what we see people do. And we hard on it. We refuse to bend on it. Tayyib. If you have the PDF, right, look at page 231. And now I'm reading from the explanation now, Sheikh Salih Fawzan, right? That last paragraph in the middle where it says it must be pointed out. It says it must be pointed out that filling the gaps of the row does in no way refer to what some people who claim to be knowledgeable do nowadays. We're talking about what it looks like to straighten up the row. He says, in his effort to close the gaps, how many people you know do this? He spreads his legs far apart such that he takes up the standing space of two people. He said, this is not from straightening the rows, right? In doing so, he inconveniences those besides him. We know what that means? You make it a problem for the brother or sister. Now they got to pray with their feet all close together because you're taking up two spaces, trying to close the gap, right? He says, Islam teaches us to fill the gaps in between a row by standing at ease, and not with your the legs far apart. Shoulder width, which means we got to do a little detail because we have a lot of problems, right? We got a lot of problems. This causes problems, especially on the sister side during Ramadan, y'all. We can't get over there. The sisters Allah forgive us all. And we're not saying, I don't know, not saying they from here. I don't know where they from. They from wherever they from. Wherever they are from, it's out of line. The imam is responsible to delegate a sister that's over there to make sure the rows are straight. Just like the imam is responsible to delegate a man on the men's side to check the rows. The problem is we start lining up and everybody starts screaming, yo, back up. No, you up, move up, take. And we're not looking at we're not looking at shoulders or chest. Like the hadith says. He would wipe across. We're looking at feet. And that's it. Yeah, Shay.
A while ago, they were always saying toe to toe.
Toe to toe. La hawla. Tayyib. I'm gonna read something from here, and this is an explanation of the issue in a book that's a little more detailed. It says, ثم يسوي الإمام الصفوف. Then the imam is to straighten the row, right? وذلك مستحب, and that is something that is recommended to do. He says, وَيَلْتَفِتُ عَنْ يَمِينِهِ فَيَقُولُ اسْتَوُوا رَحِمَكُمُ اللَّهُ وَعَنْ يَسَارِهِ كَذَلِكَ. And then the imam, after he straightens the rows, he looks to his right, says, straighten the row. May Allah have mercy on you. And there's plenty of hadith of what he says, and he looks on the left and does the same thing. It says here, from the benefits, some benefits on this issue, right? It says, al-ula. It says, at-taswiyatu masnuna, at-taswiyatu al-masnuna fi sufuf. What is the recommended way to straighten the rows? When we talk about straighten the rows, he says, hiya mahadhatu al-manakib wal-aq'ub duna atraf al-asabi'. He said it is lining up the shoulders, making sure the shoulders are in line. Nobody's in front of nobody else, right? وَالْأَقْرُبْ دُونَ أَطْرَافِ الْأَصَابِعِ. And that the ankles are in line, not the toes. The line is not based on the toes. The line is based on the heel. What does that mean, the line is based on the heel? The heels are to be in line. Just like Like the shoulders and everything's supposed to be in line, meaning it's supposed to be straight across, y'all. We're not even talking about touching and not touching. We're not talking about touching or not touching. Right now, all we're talking about, straighten the rows. How? It's supposed to be in line. Nobody's supposed to be a little in front of anybody else. طيب. He says, الثانية يستحب تراص الصفوف وسد الخلل الذي فيها وتكميل الصف الأول فالأول. It's also recommended to get close in the rank, to get close, to close the gaps, and to complete the first line all the way, and then move and start. Don't start the second line until the first line is complete. Everybody clear? طيب. If it's recommended to complete the first line, right? Because some people, they don't complete the first line first. There's still room in the first line and they start the second line. What happens when if somebody, you come in the masjid to pray, it's space in the first line, and when you get there, they already started the second line and you see a space in the first line. How do we handle that? You're gonna fill in the first line. Anybody else? The reward is greater. No doubt, the reward is greater. It's a greater reward the closer you are to the imam in the salat. First row is the best row for the men. Everybody clear? So what you going to do when you come in and they already started the second row and there's room in the first row? You're going to fill the gap? What else you going to do?
That's the man's job.
I'm going to tell you what we do. Not what we do, but what we do. We start screaming at the people who are already praying. Yo, come fill the first rank. They praying already. Or we might even grab somebody and pull them over to fill the first rank. No way authorized to do that thing in the Islam. We might actually pull somebody out while they're praying, or actually just walk up and talk to somebody. I've seen people, yo, why y'all start? They're praying. They already praying. Yeah, it's room in the first rank. They're like, yo, why y'all start the second rank? Y'all should have filled the rank in. Shh. Allah forgive us. I mean, if we had knowledge of what we're doing, it's easy. You fill in the row. Just fill the row in. If they miss the reward of the first row, you walk in, alhamdulillah. Hey, subhanAllah. He left me a space in the first row. You start waving people down while they praying and disturbing their khushur, and they might not even know what to do in reality. Tayyib. This is another section, and this what I'm reading from now is Sharh al-Kabir. This is another section or another book I want to read from for the same issue. And I'm only doing this because if we knew these basic things, it would cut down a lot of fitna that we have inside of the masjids during the prayer. This is the best place we could possibly be. At the masjid, in the prayer, praying Jama'ah, and we still arguing about stuff. Right? Because not knowing this basic stuff. Now, there's plenty of hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this book is called Ahkam Hudhur al-Masajid by Sheikh Abdullah Fawzan, not Sheikh Salih Fawzan, Sheikh Abdullah Fawzan. He doesn't have too many books translated, but he has a lot of books that the Tulab al-Ilm use as reference books. He explained a lot of different books. This is a book about the rulings when you attend the masjid, when attending the masjid. And this is the section about straightening the rows. And what he does is first he brings the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about straightening the rows that we all probably heard before. So sufufakum, straighten the rows, because straighten the rows is from perfection of the prayer or from completing the prayer. This is the second hadith he brings on Ibn Mas'ud al-Badri. Abi Mas'ud al-Badri radiyallahu anhu qala kana Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam yamsahu manakibana fi as-salat. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to wipe against our shoulders in the salat. How many brothers you see wiping shoulders when they come time to line up? He says, وَيَقُولُ, and he would say, استووا, straighten the rows. وَلَا تَخْتَلِفُوا فَتَخْتَلِفُوا قُلُوبُكُمْ, and don't differ, because if you differ, it'll cause your hearts to differ. He will wipe what? According to the hadith? The shoulders. طيب. And then he mentions another hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, he says, سَمِعْتُ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ يَقُولُ, and this is the hadith It says, straighten your rows, or Allah will cause you all to differ. Right? That's 3 hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We should understand some of the ulama argue that straightening the rows is obligatory, and some argue that it is sunnah, recommended, and it's a difference in the ruling. Right? According to our book that we're reading, what's the ruling on straightening the rows? Recommended. Right? According to the author. Tayyib. He says here, and he brings another hadith, and this is under the section, the reward connecting to straightening the rows. The hadith is عن ابن عمر رضي الله عنهما أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال أقيموا الصفوف, straighten the rows, وحاذوا بين المناكب, straighten the rows and line up shoulders, وسد الخلل, and close the gaps, and do not leave a space for the shaitan. Right? That hadith. طيب. And then he brings another hadith, man said the farjatan rafa'ahu Allahu biha daraja. Whoever closes the gap, that Allah will raise a person's level. There's another hadith. It says, عن عبد الله بن عمر رضي الله عنهما أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال خياركم ألينكم مناكب في الصلاة. The best of you are the ones who have the softest shoulders during the salat. How you have a soft shoulder? You're not harming the person next to you. This is what brothers, I don't know, I've seen some sisters pray before, but I know what brothers do. Brothers will do this joint, and then they like box you out to do whatever they trying to do. And if you try to move, that's why you come in, you see sometimes brothers praying like this. They in the salat, but the brothers don't even no regard for the person next to us praying. So bad that the brother has to pray sideways like this. If he tries to turn straight, he can't, because we refuse to move. We're not going to budge, as if that's sunnah. The hadith says, khiyarukum, the best of you are the ones who have the softest shoulders when in the salah. That you soft with the brother or the sister next to you. Right? وَمَا مِنْ خُطْوَةٍ أَعْظَمْ أَجْرًا مِنْ خُطْوَةٍ مَشَاهَا رَجُلٌ إِلَى فُرْجَةٍ فِي الصَّفِّ فَسَدَّهَا. He said, there's no step greater than the step that a person, in reward, greater than the step that a person takes to move up and fill a gap. If you moving up to fill a gap, that must mean what? Huh? If you can move up to fill a gap, what do you know about that gap? It was a big gap. For you to be able to move up and fill a gap, it had to be big for a whole person to step up and walk in between the gap. Some of us don't think we can move though. So you know, you're praying, somebody in front of you break their wudu, and there's a big gap there, right? The Prophet ﷺ said, "Ma min khutwa a'zam ajran." There's no step where the reward is greater. Min khutwa mashaha rajul, than the step that a person takes ila furjatin fi saf, to a gap in the rank that he closes. Follow.
What you just said about the gap, I think we see this a lot too. Sometimes the gap not big enough for a person. You know what I mean? Like it's not even big enough for a child. But sometimes people try to force their way in the gap. I guess they got good intentions. Alhamdulillah, you want to thank good people. But it actually causes more harm than good.
No doubt.
Like, so, like
no doubt.
Saying, so I was going to say, in that case, it's better to not try to
no
push
doubt.
your way up there, because it causes you just making more people uncomfortable trying to fit a 2-person into a size.
A half of a person. Sahih. If there's not enough space, it's not enough space.
170-pound squat.
No doubt. It's not. If it's not there, it's not enough space for you. It's not difficult. It's not really, you know what I'm saying? It's not enough space for you to fit there. But it's a gap. Well, it's not your job to fill that gap because you can't fit there. That's the people praying their job. That don't mean we have to tap them and start shoving people. We're not authorized to do that kind of stuff. I don't know where we start, just, you know what I'm saying? We'd be touching people while they praying, grabbing people's ankles when we line up, jamming them next to each other. Tayyib. He says here, and this is a section, this is a hadith that is used, an author that is used a lot. And Sheikh Abdullah, he says about it, This is another one. It says here, how to straighten the rows. And this is a hadith that I think most people probably get the foot, right? Foot to foot, shoulder to shoulder. It says, عن أنس رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال أقيموا صفوفكم, straighten your rows, فإني أراكم من وراء ظهري. I can see you behind my backs. Now this is Anas رضي الله عنه speaking. He says, وكان أحدنا يلزق منكبه بمنكب صاحبه وقدمه بقدمه. He said, one of us, and it says, one of us would make sure that our shoulder was touching the shoulder of the person next to him, and that our foot was touching the foot's person next to him. How many people? One. So what was everybody else doing? Huh? No, he said one of us would do that. And it says, the Prophet ﷺ said, straighten the rows, I can see you from behind my back. Right? And it says, وَكَانَ أَحَدُنَا. So one of us, a person from amongst the Sahaba, he used to do what? He used to make sure that his shoulder was connected to the shoulder's person next to him, and that his ankle was connected to the person's ankle next to him.
So one of us did that.
Was everybody doing that?
No, each one.
Did he say everybody was doing that? He said one of us was doing that.
Everybody following and everybody followed suit.
That's what is that what you
That's the
understood?
assumption that I
Okay, cool. We don't know what everybody else was doing.
No, I didn't say that.
No, I'm just saying. You could understand everybody else fell in line with what he did, or you could understand maybe it was just one of the people, one of the Sahaba did that. That's how they understood it, and that's what they did. You understand? طيب. The next narrator says, وقال النعمان بن بشير رحمه الله رضي الله عنه. He says, فرأيت الرجل يلزق منكبه بمنكب صاحبه وركبته بركبة صاحبه وكعبه بكعبه. Nu'man ibn Bashir radiallahu anhu said, I saw the man attach his shoulder to the shoulder of the person next to him. Somebody, I need some volunteers now. And his, you ready? His knee to the knee of the person next to him, and his ankle to the ankle of the person next to him. You ready? Yeah. But come over here so everybody, a little back a little bit. Maybe in back, yeah. Yeah. Now, your ankle's not touching. Yes. We'll take them over to sister's side when they done. No, I'm messing. Tell you. All right, we do it again. Number one, if we taking the statement literal, are the ankles touching?
No, that's not really possible.
It's not even possible.
It's not even
Tell you, are the knees touching?
it's not really possible.
Number one, look at their shoulders. Right? As long as they're in line, the chest's supposed to be in line, the shoulder's supposed to be in line. Two sisters could stand up and try it. All you need is two sisters to stand up, put y'all foot to foot, shoulder to shoulder. The ankles still won't touch. Yes. Yes, but let's use don't even use the word foot, because the hadith doesn't say foot. The hadith, the narration says ka'b, ankle. You with me? It's not going to touch. All right, cool. If it's not going to touch, sisters, anybody try it? The knees, are the knees touching? So how are we supposed to apply something that's not even possible? If we line up 10 people, shoulder to shoulder, right? We're going off the statement of Nu'man ibn Bashir radiallahu anhu. He said, I saw a man, right? Yulziq, his shoulder with his shoulder, the person next to him. The rukbah, his knee with his knee. Are y'all knees touching? Can we get any closer, y'all?
came in.
All right, now you're making it. Now the shoulders is off, right? Now the shoulders are off, and now you uncomfortable.
Can you, it's forced.
But if you want to come,
You're saying it's impossible. Can you understand it as this? That they're aligned. They're not literally touching, but they're aligned.
We're gonna get to it. We're gonna get to their shape. We're gonna get there. We need to make sure we know what we're doing first, according to the hadith. Sisters, did y'all try it, or do y'all need to see it? Did it work? Were y'all able to touch ankles? Were y'all able to touch knees? Tayyib. I'm gonna skip to something real quick. He says about this narration, Sheikh Abdullah Fawzan. He says, what is intended by that statement, كما يقول حافظ ibn Hajar, like Hafid ibn Hajar said, who explains Sahih Bukhari. He said, what is meant by that statement about the shoulders and the knees and the ankles touching, he said, al-mubalagha fi ta'dil as-saf wa sadd al-khalal. He said that statement is what's meant is to emphasize, just emphasis on how close we should be. We took it what? Literal. We try to apply it literal and it still doesn't work. Because if you line up, like we say, foot to foot, heel to heel, the ankles still don't touch. The knees still not touching. And if they are, we probably done went overboard like he's ready to talk about. Everybody clear? Tayyib. I'm not saying don't close the gap. Don't say he didn't say don't close the gap. I'm reading what's understood, what the Ahl al-Ilm, the people of knowledge say, right? We got to apply what we practice. Our practice has to be gauged and checked by something.
It's clear. It's clear from what we just
If you do that,
it's literally clear.
and that's what he says.
We couldn't touch ankles, there's no-
He says this. He says, how do we know it's meant that? He said it's emphasized to straighten the row, وَسَدِّ خَلَلِهِ, and to close the gaps. How do we know that? He says, بِدَلِيلٍ أَنَّ إِلْزَاقَهُ الرُّكْبَ بِالرُّكْبَ حَالَ الْقِيَامِ مُتَعَذِّرٍ. He said, based on the fact that when they're standing there in qiyam, standing up, it's impossible while they're standing for their knees to touch. So the fact that it's not possible for their knees to touch while they're standing, it can't mean the literal meaning. That makes sense? That's the argument. Tayyib. Now he mentions here, he says, here are some ways to know that the row is being straightened. How do we straighten the rows? He says, number one, he mentioned four things. He said, itmam as-saf al-awwal fal-awwal, straightening or filling the first rank. Fill up the first rank first, meaning the imam, and then line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4. That line 1 should be filled as much as it can be first, and then line 2 starts. Tayyib. And closing the gaps, bit taras. Close the gaps by being close together. He says, number 2, istiqamat as-saf, straightening the rows with ta'diluhu bil muhadhat, by aligning and straightening. He mentioned 4 things. Al-a'naq, the necks. Al-manakib, the shoulders. Al-rukub, the knees, in line. And number 4, of course, the ankles. Tayyib. How you do that? He says, بِحَيْث لَا يَتَقَدَّمْ عُنُقْ عَنْ عُنُقْ, that nobody is further up. Your neck, you up here, and the person next to you is a little further back, right? وَلَا مَنْكِبْ عَلَى الْمَنْكِبْ, and nobody's shoulders are in front of the other person. وَلَا صَدْرْ عَلَى صَدْرٍ, nobody's up here, right? Not that your chest necessarily, you work out, so your chest might be a little bigger. No. But in line-wise. Tayyib. He says, number 3, Allah yuwassi al-musalli bayna qadamayhi. He said that the person, every person that's praying does not spread their legs too far apart. Right? Don't spread your feet too far apart when you stand up. He says, لِأَنَّ ذَلِكَ يَمْنَعَ الْإِتِّسَاقَ الْمَنْكِبِ صَاحِبِهِ بِمَنْكِبِهِ. If your legs are too far apart when you're praying, if I spread my legs too far apart and you spread your legs too far apart, what is able to touch? What are we going to be touching? feet. But what are we not going to be touching? So we're going to leave the hadith about the shoulders, right? He says we should not, because that's going to make us, we're not able to apply the hadith about touching shoulder to shoulder. He says, التقارب فيما بين الصفوف وفيما بينها وبين الإمام. He said number 4, being close in the rows, people that we line up, we still stay close, right? He says in the rows, the lines should be close also, meaning sometimes we line up here, right? And sometimes people start the first row back there where you at, Sheikh. You see how far that is from the imam? And then we say, what? No, slide up. You can bring the line up. The line should be close. And then somebody take it and they might start the second line too far back. The line shouldn't be too far gap, but they should be far enough away to do what? To make sajda. Sometimes we line the lineups too close and we can't even go in sajda because we don't have enough space, right? So it should be enough space to pray, make sajda, but not too far, keeping the actual ranks straight. We clear so far? Yes. Number 3, Allah yuwasir al-musalli bayna qadamay, that the person praying does not open their feet too wide while they're praying. If they do that, they remove the ability to be able to touch the shoulder of the person next to them. Tayyib. So those were the 4 things. He says now, I'm going to read it verbatim. وَلَيْسَ مِن تَسْوِيَةُ الصَّفْ مَا يَفْعَلُهُ بَعْضُ النَّاسِ, and it is not from straightening the rows, what some people do. مِن مُلَاحَقَةِ مَنْ عَلَى يَمِينِهِ وَمَنْ عَلَى يَسَارِهِ, from chasing the people that's on his right or on his left. Why is he chasing them? لِيُلْصِقَ كَعْبَهُ بِكَعْبِ جَارِهِ, in order to connect his ankle to the person's ankle next to him. So it is not from straightening the rows. يَفْعَلُ ذَلِكَ, listen to this, y'all. He said he does that fil qiyam, while he's standing up. What is he doing? Trying to chase right with his feet, trying to touch the person's feet next to him. He does it while he's standing up. What ruku'? When he's in ruku', he's still doing it. Right? What about the rafman of ruku'? Even when he come up out of ruku', he's still trying to get the person next to him. Right? He says, وَهَذَا فِعْلُ, this action of chasing the person, as we call it, chasing the person. He says, لَا أَصْلَ لَهُ فِي تَسْوِيَةُ الصُّفُوفِ, there's no origin Islamically in straightening the rows like this. وَفِيهِ أَخْطَاء عَدِيدَةً, and there are many mistakes in doing that. Now he's going to mention the mistakes of, as we say, I had to chase the brother next to me because he wouldn't touch my feet. He says, number 1, the first mistake, when a person is constantly throughout the prayer is trying to, let's just say, right, you're trying to close the gap and the person next to you is not closing the gap. Have you done your job in closing the gap? You can't make the person next to you close the gap. And we're not supposed to be chasing people with our feet in order to close the gap. Right? He says, number 1, when you do that, he says, ishtighalan wa ishghalan. It's 2 things. He says, fi ishtighal bima lam yushra'. You're busy with something that's not legislated in Islam and not in the Salat. That's not legislated for us to keep moving that type of movement. That's a lot of movement. You moving your foot, you're chasing the foot, they moving, every time you touch them, they move. You did your job. That's on them. He said, وَإِكْثَارْ مِنَ الْحَرَكَةِ, and a lot of movement. He says, also, when you do that, he says, إِشْغَالٌ لِلْجَارِ بِمُلَاحَقَةِ قَدْمِهِ. You busy your neighbor because the neighbor, your brother or your sister, is worried about you chasing them with your feet. So now y'all both are busy doing the salat, focused on something other than the actual prayer. He said that's a mistake. He says, number 2, or this one. He says here, فيه اقتطاع لمحل قدم غيره بغير حق. And he used this word. He says, you have taken the space of the brother or sister next to you with no right. They were lined up there, and now, since you're trying to touch, right, Now your feet are in their space, their prayer space, which is a mistake. He says, فَإِنَّ جَارَهُ يَفِرُّ مِنْهُ. These are the words he's using. So now that the person praying next to you is running from you. Haven't you heard people say that, right? They run when I try to touch my feet. Right? That the person is running from you. It says, وَهُوَ يُلَاحِقَهُ. And he's chasing him. فِي مَكَانِهِ الَّذِي سَبَقَ إِلَيْهِ. And you're chasing the person, and now you've exited your prayer area. You're in their prayer area now, where they stand. And you're chasing them. Which you don't have the right to, you don't have any right to be over there in the person's prayer space that they lined up and they were there before you. Everybody clear? طيب. The next one he says, فيه تفويت لتوجيه رؤوس القدمين إلى القبلة. He said, also when we do that, we miss out on which way are we supposed to be facing? But when we do that, which way are our feet facing once we do that? The more we chase them, the further we got to go out, right? And you never know how when a person's feet stop, right? So he says we lose out on the toes facing the Qibla. He says, why? Because most of the people who do this, he says, لأن أكثر هؤلاء يلوي قدمه. They curve their feet. They can keep their feet straight. When they're doing that, trying to connect them, next thing you know, their feet are curved in order to try to touch the foot of the person next to them. طيب. The last one, he says, when it comes to closing the gaps, and this happened on the sister side, there's a question now. When we start a new row, what side does the row start from? The right. Well, behind the imam.
Like say if it's the first row, he's behind the imam, and once that row complete, then the next person starting the second row should be behind the muezzin, and then they go from the right.
J. Anybody else? One person said from the right, start the row from the right. One person said in the middle. In the middle meaning behind the imam. Wherever the imam is lined up, that the second row starts in the middle, which is behind the imam. Or does it even matter? It does matter. Why does it matter? You follow an imam in the best position in the prayer is closest to the imam. So if you're in the second or third or fourth row, right? What's closer to the imam? The fourth row on the far right, or the fourth row on the far left, or the fourth row in the middle? The fourth row in the middle. طيب. We line up and we lined up in the row. If we're trying to close the gaps, which way do we close the gaps when we're in the row?
If you line up to that right, the person is to the left. If you line up this way, it's to the
Everybody should be closing the gaps inward towards the imam. If you're on the left, you should be moving over to the right, closer to the imam. If you're on the right and y'all closing the gaps, you should be moving over to your left to get closer to the imam. The sister was arguing in Ramadan. The sister was mad. They keep starting the rows. You got to start from the right side. You can't start the row from the left side. And for real, on the sister's side, the pathway is on the right side. So they have an excuse of how they're going to start the row. Maybe they do start from the left against the wall. There was a whole issue about where do the sisters start the row. And the best way to start the row is the closest to the imam is the best way. I thought that was important so that we get a better some clarity about the rows and from the.
I heard like, when you pray outside, like they were stopping rows, like you can put a chair here and stop in the row. I didn't understand that.
Outside?
Yeah, outside.
What you mean you stop in the row?
Like you pray out, like I think it was on the Eid. Like when he's praying outside.
Uh-huh.
I'm cutting this row off and put a chair here. Like, you got more space.
Allah, I don't know. It could be maybe, for example, we don't go as far as we can go in here
Right.
for the reason so that people, right? until we can't, because then people can't get in. So maybe, I don't know, it could be we outside, safety, they got some type of thing they trying to set up to keep people organized. Allah, I don't know. Huh?
In the road saying, like, they're
Well, you know, we all generals, man. That's the problem. We all line up and everybody's a general. When we line up, everybody got something to say when we line up. Just like we get to a janazah, we get to the graveyard, everybody got something to say when we get to the burial. We won't allow the people in charge to just do their job. Everybody got to say something. We line up, it's the imam's job to delegate you to straighten the rows. Nobody delegated the imam. If the imam doesn't do it, then that means we missed what? A sunnah. The imam is supposed to delegate, sister such and such, you there? Yeah. All right, make sure the rows are straight. That's her job. It's not for all the sisters to line up, everybody looking behind everybody. Move up, sis. I just go in and start praying. Allahu Akbar. Man, I am not. I just go start praying. It's not your job. It's the imam's job. If the imam leaves it, leave it. He's responsible. He's responsible to say, Sheikh, can you check the rows for me? But we refuse. We just come in there and, you know what I'm saying?
I was thinking about something you said before, and you was like, man, I don't know what our problem is, why we just that and the third. And then, like, I was looking at some psychology thing. I was like, man, you can't fix a problem if you don't put a name on
Sahih.
it. But the problem that we got is a deficiency in belief, and the belief is being solved.
That knocks
Like
in
how you
iman.
said, soft about the shoulder.
Yeah.
You talk to people soft.
Talk to people soft.
It's a whole big thing about being soft towards your brother or
For
your
sure.
sister, or just towards non-Muslim. But we just like, there's a deficiency in our belief because we don't believe that.
So we don't think we can be soft. Our iman is not strong enough to say, you know what? I know where I come from. I'm supposed to be hard as nails, but I'm a Muslim, and Islam allows me to be soft and gentle with my brother or sister, even though I don't know them and they not from my neighborhood and we don't come up there. I can still be soft and gentle with them, and I don't lose no points. That's iman. I'm not ready to turn all the way in to the Muslim like that yet. I still got a little bit of edge. May Allah forgive us. I mean, tell you. No doubt. We got to spell, and we hate for somebody to be in like you. Allah understand. Everybody's not in charge, y'all. The imam's job is to straighten the row. If the imam doesn't straighten the row, he delegates a person to straighten the row. You can't take it upon yourself. It's not your job is to follow the imam. Alhamdulillah. And what that does is that relieves any responsibility off of you. He ain't straightening the row. That's his job. That was the second thing that the author, we back to the PDF. The second thing that the author mentioned was from the sunnah things is to straighten the row. Remember, this is the description of the prayer. So he says after that, وَيَقُولُ, after we have stood up at the statement of قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ, and after we have straightened the rows, he says, وَيَقُولُ Allahu Akbar. Now he describes the Allahu Akbar. He says, Allahu Akbar, and nothing can replace that. The only statement that starts the salat is Allahu Akbar. That's called the opening takbir. The opening takbir, or takbiratul ihram, right? Once we say Allahu Akbar and we start praying, some things that used to be halal become haram, right? Some things, after we line up to pray, after you say Allahu Akbar, some things that used to be halal before you said Allahu Akbar are now haram because you're in the salat. Tayyib. It says you say Allahu Akbar, rafi'an yadayhi, madmumatay al-asabi' mamdudatan hadwa mankibayhi kas-sujud. That a person, this is on page 231, that a person, when they say Allahu Akbar, they're raising their hands, right? He says that the hands are the fingers, not like this, right? Mamduda, Yeah, then. Y'all call it then. Memdudatan, stretched out, meaning not like this. We're going to pause for the adhan, inshallah. Let me see. Bismillah. Tayyib. So he describes now how the hands are supposed to be when we raise them during the takbir. Tayyib. He says, a person says, Allahu Akbar, with the fingers not spread apart but joined together, right? It says memduda. It says here in the book, right? His fingers are kept close to each other. He raises his hands up to shoulder level as he doesn't. All right, it doesn't mention that. He mentions here memduda, stretched out, meaning not. Does anybody do this? People do this all the time. They do like this. They do like this. Yeah. Or they do like this with the hands to the side. If it's memduda, right? Or they touch the ears, right? Memduda, raising them up to the shoulder or the height of the earlobe. Right? Not necessarily like we just, or people do this joint. I'm serious. Because people do it and we just follow. Like I don't know, like what about the hadith of the Prophet? What about the practice of the shoulders lining up? The hands, like here or there. And we just be following people. People do something, we assume they know what they know, we just follow them. All kinds of stuff. Or, I ain't trying to be funny, I'm serious, y'all. I'm serious. We need to see what we're doing. So, how does it line up what we're doing against the hadith of the Prophet? This joint. I'm just saying. People do things and then maybe they taught somebody else to do it. And then they teach somebody and they teach somebody. But you can't teach a person if you've never even been taught or learned it. You see what I'm saying? The palm's supposed to be facing the Qibla, right? Up to the shoulders or up a little higher. That's it. Everything else we need to be able to produce. Why am I doing it like that? Tayyib. He says the way that the hands are raised at that takbir, right, is the same way that the hands are supposed to be. He says kes sujud. The same way in sujud, meaning what? In sujud, the hands are supposed to be like this at the level of your shoulders. We be laid, some people, they be laid all the way down. They got their hands like this, shoulders up based on what? No, they based on the hadith. What's the hadith? That he can see his armpits. So we take that and then we practice it. What does that look like if you can see his armpits? There's a question now. In order for me, somebody's praying, in order for me to be able to see their armpits, how wide does it have to be though? Because the problem with this is we'll do this in the Jama'ah and knock a brother over and box somebody out and all that and don't even care about the person next to us. You know what I'm saying? Like nobody's praying next to you. Like you just knock a person over with this. You could see his white shake when he was in sujood. This is the question. All we got to do, right? We got to do it off camera. All you got to do is somebody getting such and hey, well, John's not that wide. How wide do it got to be? That's cool, but what if it's somebody praying next to you? I'm just saying, you feel what I'm saying? Out of consideration that we don't enter into a person's space with our feet, if we can't enter into a person's space with our feet, why will we be able to enter a person's space with our elbows and shoulders? And then we're going to say, what is the sunnah? Huh? If you're praying by yourself, you could do all this stuff you want, like I'm saying, but you got to be considerate of the person praying next to you.
Well, I get two questions. I thought that had been what the prophet said where he said that he could see his underarms, the redness of his skin, was when he was making dua on mother.
Yes, that's another one.
Oh, that's another
Yeah, that's another one.
All right.
That's another one.
All right. So this one is for when he was in sujood.
Yes.
The other issue is that when you're in sujood, your fingers have to be closed, but they should be closed.
Yes, they should be closed just like the hands,
Like this.
like not right like this. Just like the hands in when we say Allahu Akbar. Right? Shoulders flat, facing the Qibla. He says kes sujud, the same way when you're in sujood. Not in sujood like this. We're going to sujood and we do this. Right? Facing the Qibla.
So just to be clear, it's not recommended. It's wajib.
What?
For your hands to be like this, like this. That's what I'm just.
That's what you're saying?
To be clear, I'm asking.
Right now, I'm glad you asked. He said, is that wajib? Right now, he's not mentioning was wajib, but none of that. He's not really going into detail. Once we're going to go through a general comb through the salat, then he's going to go back and start detailing, okay, remember we spoke about this? All right, this is obligatory. Remember this? All right, this is sunnah. That's how he does it. He just mentioned the two in the beginning of standing at the time when the muezzin says qad salat and straightening the rows as sunnah. And then after that, some things are mixed. Some things are pillars, some things are sunan. طيب. It says, وَيُسْمِعُ الْإِمَامِ مَنْ خَلْفِهِ. He says, وَيُسْمِعُ الْإِمَامِ من خلفه كقراءته في أولتي غير الظهرين وغيره نفسه. And we're going to stop after this next part right here. The imam that's leading the salat, he reads loud enough. I'm sorry. The takbir, we're talking about the opening takbir. The imam says Allahu Akbar loud enough for the people behind him to hear him. Everybody clear? The imam says Allahu Akbar loud enough for the people that are following him to hear him say Allahu Akbar. He says just like he reads loud enough when he's reading out loud in the loud prayers. When he's reading in Fajr and when he's reading in Maghrib and Isha, he reads loud enough so the people behind him can hear him. Same thing for the takbirat, Allahu Akbar. He says it loud enough for the people to hear him. Everybody clear? If it's not the imam who's praying, if it's not the imam, because remember it's three people. We broke the people praying as three categories, right? It's the imam or the follower or you praying alone. The imam says Allahu Akbar, loud enough for the people to hear him. The other two categories, they say it loud enough only that they hear themselves. Meaning if I'm praying alone, I can just say Allahu Akbar. Right? I don't have to scream it out. When you're praying behind a person, the imam says Allahu Akbar. All you have to do is say Allahu Akbar. You don't have to say, and I used to think that, I didn't know. I thought you had it I thought it was kind of like, I didn't know. I thought it was a competition almost to see who could say it the loudest. So I would raise my Allahu Akbar, but we was little, you know what I'm saying? The person praying behind the imam only has to say it loud enough to hear themselves. The person praying alone only says Allahu Akbar loud enough to hear themselves. The imam has to say it loud enough for the jama'ah, the people behind them. He says after that, and we're going to stop here, ثُمَّ يَقْبِضُ يُسْرَاهُ تَحْتَ سُرَّتِهِ. And we're going to stop there because this is another long, detailed situation. He says, after that, after saying Allahu Akbar, he says, he now grabs his left hand with his right hand and places it below his belly button, below the navel. Everybody clear? He says, ثُمَّ يَقْبِضُ يُسْرَاهُ تَحْتَ سُرَّتِهِ. That's on page 232. He says, then he grabs his left. We're talking about where the hands go when we're standing up. Oh, I'm sorry, 233. It says he clutches his left. Yeah, and he does this. He grabs it. He grabs it. Allahu Akbar. And he places it under his belly button, down here. Everybody clear? Father. Yeah. We're going to get there. We're not going to do it today because it's a detailed conversation, but let's just say this. It's a difference, number one, between a clutch and a placement. That's number one. You could do this, you grab it, or you place it. Wada. In general, most people know the hadith, and the ulama differ. The ulama agree, scholars agree, and the salat is right over left. That's what we agree on. Now, everybody clear? Right over left, not left over right. All right. Where the ulama differ on is where do you put the hands after that? Where you put them? Everybody gonna say the chest, right? Huh? We got to get in some detail with this, where the hands go. The hands is, I'll say this, because he mentioned, I'm gonna mention this, which is at the end. And this is important. He says, as they say, the issue of where the hands go, meaning is a couple places they can go. As the author says, they can go below the navel, or they can go on the navel, or they can go above the navel, or they can go on the chest. Most people know the chest. And if you do anything other than the chest, you're not praying right. That's what most people know. Right? And some of the ulama hold that the hadith about the chest, putting them on the chest, is weak. We're not going to get into that, though. But point being is that, as the scholars say, when it comes to where does it go, then that's an issue that's, they say, fihi was. It's room in that issue to differ. Why? Because all of the narrations in that hadith about that, very few are thabit, authentic like that. So where do they go? Do they go here, here, here? Number one, wherever a person puts them, it's not going to invalidate their prayer. That's number one. Number two, it's not your prayer. You do your prayer. Me, Ali radiallahu anhu, for example, Ali radiallahu anhu, we know Ali ibn Abi Talib. He said, min as-sunnah, he said, from the sunnah is to put the right hand over the left below the navel. That's what Ali said, radiallahu anhu. What if I go with that? You got a problem with me because I got my hands too low. You know what I'm saying? The early man different on where the hands go. Huh? You can't. You know what I'm saying? If you put them on the chest, they all say, if you put them here, if you put them here, if you put them here, oh yeah.
What about, because I mean, I see a lot of people do this, they go out to see people.
Yeah. So that's not what, this is not this. This is not recorded. This jump, you know what I'm saying? Holding the elbow is not recorded. The forearm is recorded, or in the heart. The heart is not recorded. The forearm, the wrists, right? Right over left. We're sure about right over left. Where though? The scholars differ. Does it go right on the left? On the chest? Some say, I won't even mention that because I don't want to scare nobody. You know what I'm saying? But right over left is agreed. Where, as the ulama say, is room. Is room on where the hands go. So what that means is when you see your brother or your sister and they don't have their hands where your hands are, there's no need to be angry. Fadl. Sudden. Putting them down to the listen, even if somebody pray with their hands down to their side, sudden, right? Like this. Number one, that's not going to invalidate the prayer. Because I know brothers who said, I'm not praying behind them anymore. Why? They don't put their right hand over their left in the salat. As if putting your right over your left, if you don't do it, doesn't invalidate the salat, number one. Bare minimum, they did what? They missed out on what? A sunnah. If they want to miss out on the sunnah, that's not my salat. Would I teach my kids to pray like that? I wouldn't do that. But if somebody else is doing it and that's how they praying, they got to meet Allah with that. They have to meet Allah with their prayer, and we have to meet Allah with our prayer. Everybody has to meet Allah with the prayer that you're praying with. So we want our prayers to be as close to the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ as possible. The Prophet ﷺ says, Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli. Pray the way you saw me pray. Tayyib. Inshallah, next week we'll start off with a little more detail on where the hands go in that issue, so we can get a little more clarity. Inshallah, wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak bina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.